How's it going? Huh? Yeah. Some. Are you interested? Nice, thank you. You're the only person. So I have a lot of stuff to bring out. I am kind of deciding what to actually put up depending on like turnout. It's listed as 1 to 4, so there might be a bad sense of like um, marketing it if will show up anytime between 1 to 4. But the initial hope was like be here at 9. But naturally, people usually show up at like 1, so I'm just having a few people here at totally fine. That being said, I'm also streaming it, so I'm also giving like the online portion a chance to check the movie and check it. I still have stuff to like read on and like regarding different resources. It's a hybrid event, so it's very much both me like giving not really a speech, but like kind of a little some information for different resources, both like locally here within other states, and then like to not keep those people waiting, that probably would start sooner. But then everything like after that, like here, that's kind of just for the people that may be here to stick around and either um, check out the resources to have inside of the community center itself, or this other stuff that I bought. Let me go check what I do that. What was your name? Quinn. Bree. Nice to meet you. Other phone. Ooh. far as the summer stuff goes, I have, reading out. So I unlocked all the doors. There are at least 2 restrooms, one on the first floor, like kind of in the middle back, and then one on the first floor. So in the event that I would need to use the restroom, it's only free for it.
Okay.
And I was also going to mention other like local organizational resources that they have there too, if you would plug it for anyone that's here because they want to know more about stuff in the area, in addition to just stuff I've mentioned.
Okay, thank you. I saw the ad for this, but I wasn't exactly sure what to expect.
Me neither. Never really know.
The car noises drowned out the speaker.
Okay, that's very possible. I think when I have these, like the AirPods on, it might have a little bit more microphone, or I might not. But like you never know what to expect. Oh, okay. So it looks like as far as it sounds like the AirPods are helping. That was when I kind of go after we talk to people here and then also people not here. So it's almost like co-existent to mention that. But okay, so the people who are actually like just watching and waiting, thank you so much for being here. Right now you're literally just looking at a camera feed of like our poster in the back. And we are kind of next to a road, so there might be some problems, but I do have captions, so largely it should sound like you're able to hear my voice. If there are any issues with that, like significant ones, we may just have to move the camera to another side of the community center. But that being said, I want to make sure that I have an eye on the chat because I do want to be able to answer questions if there are any people who are asking anything while listening, and then also kind of balancing that with the people who are physically here in real life and maybe showing up a little bit more later. The digital portion of this will actually, I guess I can do more in camera here. The digital portion of this will be a lot quicker than the actual like physical fair, and the physical fair will just largely be on who's actually showing up here. But for the stream itself, I do have a few pages of resources to kind of like talk about in terms of what's out there, and I think for your patience, I'm going to pause speaking to the stream for a second to talk to the people here. So those of you here, I have a weaker voice. It probably would have helped to have like a microphone or something. I wasn't able to get that equipment, unfortunately. I'll try to project as loudly as possible. Also bearing in mind, when I have something in my ear, it's always kind of weird talking out because it kind of feels like I'm shouting into my own head. But if you can't hear me at all, I guess the only realistic option here might be to stand closer, but whatever works for the time being. I think it'll largely be dependent on just what street is this? Main, South Main, the main traffic, and yeah. Okay, don't know how to best put this here. Put this here. Taya, thanks for being the #1 chatter here. Kind of like in general for the people watching, I would say if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask them in the chat. While this is live, I will be glancing over to my side because I have a laptop that is essentially getting the feed itself. And then I also have a few different devices in my pockets that are constantly vibrating whenever somebody in our Discord or other social media are kind of like mentioning something, so I'll be able to kind of glance over and get a sense of what people are asking. I'm just getting curious about the state of how you're able to hear me now. I know one car went by with a little bit more boom in it, so if that's too distracting, definitely let me know that. I could probably just walk around somewhere else here. But if you're able to hear me fine out there, if somebody could like maybe report back and just kind of let us know here. Best audio quality so far. Okay, cool. That's great. And then the real people, you can hear okay? Okay, cool. I might grab my coffee too just to kind of be able to sip on something. For the stuff here, if interested at all, kind of in a box, but there's a lot of different like mixed gender clothing in there. It's all just gonna be like accessible for you to take. The other bag there, it's a mixture of COVID tests, which interestingly enough, a lot of those expire in about 6 weeks. So I would say if you need any, feel free to take them and use them before they go bad. Probably still work a little beyond that, but I'm not really sure how that works. There are some resources here that are hosts, if you need someone else to take over. It was definitely traditional to be here today, but and they're also really great people too. So definitely, if you're already unfamiliar with that, then look on their website to get people. There's a lot of fresh caffeine coffee there. Feel free to taste them. I know that inside too, they have sweetener and stuff, but if you really feel like you need a flavor to it, let me know and I can. I wasn't able to carry as much stuff out as I would have wanted to. And then that being said, there were some other things I had that but if it's more just a few people, I think it's probably more like personally talk about like our nonprofit and be able to answer this stuff directly here. But yeah, I'm gonna check this again. Cool. I'm probably gonna come back over here. Cool. And then wait till that will load. Apparently I'm offline, but we'll see what's up with that and do this.
Doesn't show offline yet. There's a big delay. There's a big one in case that
I think that
helps
part's
understand
fine
the chats.
because I know that the way this works is it's like going through a middle server. So it isn't like streaming directly to YouTube itself. It's through some kind of like streaming protocol. That delay isn't always the worst. If there was somebody moderating the stream, that's usually nice to act as like a cutoff filter. But in this case, it's just there. I will, if you send anything in the chat, I'll see it. It might be delayed by like 15 seconds or so. But pretty
Do you want me to
understandable.
watch the chat and let you know if someone types something? I don't have to, but I think it'll help.
You're on it. Oh, yeah. You got it. Thank you. Okay. And then out there, make sure, because I had to mute my laptop. You're still able to hear me, right? Like you're able to hear me talking and everything here on Steam. Because if we are, I can get started. And I guess are you able to hear me in the stream at all, even with the
I
delay?
haven't turned it on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear it fine.
Um,
Someone said, yep, audio is good.
what about you? Just making sure. It would be really awkward if I started and then it was like nobody could hear. So in the past few days, I've been largely like trying to hustle to kind of like get this together. I wasn't able to get any people locally here to come out to help, unfortunately. It was a little bit more last second. Our nonprofit is kind of limited right now in terms of like resources with everything kind of going on out there and over here too. So I guess I, in doing what I can, feel that even just having a few people is always worth it. Being able to like get information out there. I think there's usually also like a domino effect. Even if I have like a few different things here to go over about like some legal resources, updates nationally, things like crises hotlines and like support groups. One person knowing that, and then sharing someone else down the road. There's like that cascading effect that just gets out there, and it doesn't have to be me, but seeing people who are doing that, I think, is good for community. So I feel that it's always worth it to try, and I'm always happy to try to do that if that's what I can. But that being said, it's been a busy past week, so it would have been nice if it worked out there a little bit more. People who are listening in virtually, where the number is kind of like floating, just a couple digits now, it's cool. People out there who are listening too, thank you for being here to listen in. A big part of our organization is like its reach. It isn't a local organization. We have chapters all over the country, and it's meant to be this united front for the trans and gender diverse communities to be able to take part, especially with a startup nonprofit where there's a lot more opportunity and a lot more recognition of everybody really making a difference there. So plugging in the nonprofit, which I will probably do a lot too over the course of talking, but it's a lot of wonderful people doing really great stuff out there. And so people who are interested, definitely feel free to reach out to us and ask, and we love getting more volunteers on the team. With that being said, if there's anything about today's program, I guess like the fact that it's about 25 minutes past the hour, and I'm sure some of you are waiting. That one's on me, and I totally apologize. But that being said, thank you all for still being here. Those of you here too, thank you for being here in person. It's very appreciated to see that. This is showing me. It is technically being recorded, so just like a little summary video for later. So that's just be mindful of letting me know if you don't want any personal identity out there. That's totally understandable. But I think it probably seems pretty simple here. This is kind of as a backdrop. So today's event, it's adequately called Well Shit What Now? This is something that we actually did last year on, I think it was November 9th, because that was a Saturday before November 16th, which was one of our days at the Capitol, actually, the week after. But this was right after the national election last year, where we saw kind of the unfortunate upset victory there, or I guess defeat in a better sense of phrasing. But there was a lot of shock to communities such as ours, and so similar then too, in the span of under a week, we were able to get an event that was having the community come together. That day it was a double event, one in Ypsilanti and one in downtown on Arbor, near the campus at U of M. And I think like several hundred people showed up in total. They were really interested in learning about like what we had intended for that day, which was between the election and inauguration, what kind of resources do people need to prepare before that exchange of power. And we largely talked about stuff related to like any passports, either initially applied for or renewed as needed. Anything that had to do with gender markers, anything that had to do with medical services, with insurance being kind of up there, the uncertainty of what could happen to that. And then what we had seen from then to now was day one, a slew of executive orders that were directly attacking not only the trans and queer communities, but a lot out there beyond just that. And it's been a nonstop game of playing defense with just kind of cards that are stacked against the community right now, from the administration to different state level governments to the courts to even just really the culture still catching up. And I have found that in the past year, it's been, in my opinion, a very positive show of force to see how a community could be faced with all that and still come together and still show that we're here, we're not going anywhere, we will adapt, and we will do what we can to survive. And that is very, very incredibly humanizing. But it's also not a perfect system. There's a lot of people out there who are very much in need. There are a lot of people out there who very much at the end of their rope. And so in my line of work with a nonprofit here over that past year, I've seen a lot of incredibly passionate and wonderful people doing what they can in little doses that they're able to, and it's been very inspiring. So I guess people here, I don't know your own lives, I'm sure you do wonderful things too, because one, you're here, and then two, I believe people are always more powerful than they sometimes realize. Same with people out there watching. If you've been following our team for the past little over a year, thank you, and thank you for being part of that. Keep being yourself, keep being strong, and keep knowing that people out there love you, people out there see you, and it's very human to feel alone, but you're not alone. So that little soliloquy there. Last year we called that event "Well Shit What Now." This is basically the follow-up to that, with a little bit of updates on the things that have happened in the past, I guess, January, mainly, I guess, like past 10 months, and also kind of a little bit of updates from like my own experience, what I've seen and done, not just here like in Michigan where I live and where I'm currently standing, but in all the other states that I've traveled to also work with the needs of other states, having been to DC a few times, all the different interactions and things I've gotten to see for myself with a nonprofit. And so I don't just speak from one particular state, I speak from a lot of places and a lot of other communities that just as persevering as the rest of them. And so today was meant to be largely a day to talk about
God, it's very nice to hear. Thank you very much for putting this all together. We'll spread the word in a heart.
Thank you so much for the people out there who...
Do you want me to just interrupt if there's a question, or interrupt for even comments, or?
So yeah, I might naturally just kind of glance,
Okay.
because out of curiosity, but I guess if you see anything that's like urgent,
Okay.
that could include maybe if somebody says something negative, I could also just like pluck it out. But yeah, if you see anything, that you definitely feel free to call me. I appreciate it. But so today is meant to be a day of events to give a little bit of some resources. I'm aware of resources that I know of and might not actually share in a public manner, but at least want to say that, like, if you want to know more about, like, say, like, smaller local level groups, I obviously don't want to put them on blast where anyone could be listening, but ways to reach out to either our team or other teams to ask about that kind of information. And then, like, some of the more bigger, obvious ones for those listening. I wish we had a poll before this. It'd be a really great opportunity to get a sense of like where people listening in are actually coming from, because that will kind of help me cue the different states I could kind of like lean more into. But I wouldn't also necessarily want people to have to like comment with their own accounts and say what state they're from. but that's totally up to the listener. But a lot of what I'm going over for like the local resources will be with respect to Southeast Michigan. And then in my own experience, I have a few, I guess currently like Ohio, Maryland, Utah, California are all ones that just off the top of my head seem very like recent in my mind. So I might have a little bit of bias there in terms of talking about some of them. But we have some for all 50 states too. So for today, I was going to talk about what's that?
I'm from Massachusetts.
Oh, nice. If you're from Massachusetts and you want to get more involved, I would just also shout out please do because our Massachusetts chapter would love to have a few more founding volunteers there. And if you're already one of those few founding volunteers, then I might know who you are and thank you for listening in. But yeah, that being said, I wanted to talk about I guess a couple of quick things. One, Jim Toy Community Center, big shout out to them. They are a nonprofit that does a lot of great, powerful work in the community here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and largely also Southeast Michigan to an extent too. They literally allowed us to use this community center for a physical place today to actually be here, and it's great to have venues to be able to host events like this. That's probably been the biggest bottleneck to actually being able to have like stuff like this. Just knowing where to go, that can always be a big challenge. But thank you for the team at Gym Toy. For those listening, if you have any interest, please check out their website, support them. They are wonderful people, and I am not saying that because I have to. I'm saying that because I genuinely would like to. And then for our team, Trans Unity Coalition, we are a lot of people all over the country who are interested in putting together this more at-large, federated nonprofit specifically for the trans, non-binary, and gender diverse communities, similar to like the Equality Federation or even like say ACLU and how they kind of operate top down. But we also have a very big emphasis on local needs, local resources, local meetups, local support, and that is something that I feel has been very attractive for a lot of people who reach out and say, hey, I want to volunteer. Do you have a chapter in insert my city yet? And we've been around for about maybe I think 16 months now, so we're super new, but we've been having a lot of unfortunate interest just with everything in the past year. But it's for that reason why I still feel it's all worth it, because I see a lot of wonderful people out there, people who are just regular people, but they really show their best when they find community that they didn't always realize was right there. And it's been very doing this, but I can't do by both hands. It's a heart, I swear. But thank you for checking in here, because I imagine if you've heard about this event, you probably already either knew about us or maybe one of our team members put a post somewhere and you saw it. But our nonprofit is kind of an interesting experiment. We have a very like lofty expansion model, but in addition to that, we also do a number of several different things as far as like core programs and services. We have a relocation assistance program that is also aided by the fact that we have chapters around the country, because we have people in multiple locations and nodes that can help with that. We have a research arm that is looking to support researchers out there, particularly post NIH funding cuts. And I was actually going to mention that a little bit later, but I would say probably California, Colorado, and here in Michigan are the 3 states where we have researchers that we're currently working and collaborating with, and it's really interesting to see. As someone who has a STEM background too, it's really cool to be able to plug that into a nonprofit somehow. We have an art arm. We want to be able to highlight and promote artists out there in our community. There's power in showing expression, and that's a big part of why it's an important component, as well as the fact that artists aren't always the most funded or most represented, unfortunately, and they definitely deserve their moment in the spotlight for the great stuff that they do. And then we have other things. We have free CPR. I'm former EMT. I'm a current CPR instructor with the AHA. That allows me to be able to teach people CPR. And I feel that it's important for people to know that in general. Like, I think that should be something that just is taught in high school, and that probably won't happen anytime in my lifetime, unfortunately, or maybe it could. But at least for the team here, being able to offer that as a courtesy, because those skills are the thing that you never really know until after the fact. And I do feel that being able to step in for somebody who already a marginalized community, that just directly gives our community as well. And we have a journalist arm. We have writers on the team who put together a lot of stories and news articles and updates for and in the community. And that's also important as we see everything as it comes, new legislation, new attacks, new changes, and it's good to keep our community updated. The mainstream media does not really cover trans-related issues with a whole lot of good faith, unless it's big enough to really capture like the more left-leaning-ish mainstream eyes, but definitely need more independent journalists. And then we also do stuff like have educational events and workshops. We do advocacy. We do direct lobbying. We train people how to lobby. I have been to a lot of different state capitals, and I've been to Congress multiple times in the past year. And every time I do, I always try to bring people, because we're going to teach other people how to do that too. That way, again, the domino effect. You're not just showing up, but you're saying, let's show up and I'll show you how to do that. And then they can show others how to do that. It's very important. But all of that is our nonprofit. And for those listening, if you haven't already reached out to ask about an opportunity to volunteer, and if it sounds like something you might be interested in, then definitely check out our website. Definitely look at where to get involved. And we just have a lot of open slots right now, and we'd be happy to have a team member reach out to us. We're 100% volunteer. I'm volunteer too. I don't get paid for this. It's just important, and now more than ever. That being said, today is meant to be different resources that we can share with people. And if there's even one out there that somebody hadn't heard of and it's helpful, then that's a win. That's worth it. The biggest thing I did want to go over first, though, was in regards to 2 days ago, actually. I'm not sure if people here have heard or people in the chat have heard, but what was the full legal wording? So there was a previous injunction that was back in, it might have been April or so, and that was basically, I think the district court, either Maryland or Massachusetts, definitely one of the bluer ones, but they had put an injunction on the previous policy by the current administration in regard to gender markers on passports, and forcing them to be in accordance with birth sex, and also eliminating the X marker too for those that require that. And so through obey courts in allowing for the current passport processes that we've seen, largely dating back from 1992, to be applied with. But a couple days ago, there was a request by the administration, I think from back in September, that was granted to essentially stay that injunction. So right now, the current order to prohibit, to prohibit X markers on passports as they come in via application and renewal, and two, just any updates with regard to a sex marker that is not matching, birth sex or birth certificate showing sex as they term it. That's essentially something where right now it isn't really in our court there. So a lot of nonprofits, including mine, have been saying for the past few months, if you need to get anything with your passport done now, do it. But as of 2 days ago, that's actually on pause. If you need anything done with your passports now, if you need to apply for a new one, if you need to renew a current one, you will unfortunately now have to rethink about, is it the right time now? Because if you send them in, they won't be recognized for the gender that you put on that application. They will be forcibly inaccurate. The current question will also be for people that maybe mailed those in like 2 weeks ago, and if they're still processing, what does that look like? That is very much a unknown because it largely depends on exactly how quickly the different departments will update all their current protocol with respect to having had needed to comply with a court order from a few months ago to now having to undo that. It isn't overnight, but I do imagine the administration is encouraging that to happen as quickly as possible. So for those of you who might have put anything in recently, and if you get something back that isn't what you wanted to see, I do apologize. And that fight, though, is not currently over yet. The ACLU is still going through with the original Orr versus Trump case. That is something that isn't settled just yet. It's just that those temporary pauses in between the court process are like just flipped right now, essentially. So the case itself, the bigger one, Orr versus Trump, that is still still being heard, still in process, and we don't have a full say yet as to how that will play out. But to that end, time will definitely tell. I think also last point there was just as a general reminder too. That's a good question. Somebody asking if there's any danger of having mismatched information. That's largely been an issue that the ACLU is taking reports on. If somebody out there has been directly impacted by having a passport or any other federal documentation that appears to cause like quote unquote confusion with people, like say maybe a TSA agent or etc. I'm pretty sure the ACLU is still taking reports of that, so definitely reach out to them, definitely look up ways to get in touch with them to let them know, because they're collecting that information to serve as evidence in court. And definitely don't make that stuff up, but it would be helpful. But that's also with the understanding that it's a very uncomfortable process to have to like reach out and talk about a situation like that. So definitely, you see both sides on that. But if you feel like it would help, definitely reach out to the ACLU if you have any direct stories about that impact. And I feel like they also want to know if you've heard of anyone else, because they can still ask more about like if that person might wish to be contacted, etc. And ACLU, they're the good guys, so definitely trust them on that one. But so I'm definitely not the most familiar here, but I'm almost positive that social security number is probably relevant when it comes to like customs and flying. Largely it would be a passport and just whatever's in the system. And but yeah, definitely consult like an attorney in your state if you have any questions with regard to actually flying out, like out of country specifically. The real ID should still be acceptable for right now if you're flying domestically. And I feel like maybe somebody here might know too that it also applies to like Canada, maybe like North America, like the real ID.
In Michigan, we have an enhanced license if you're going by land or water.
But yeah, definitely consult somebody. I unfortunately don't really know that answer at the right time. The last point I was going to make there, though, and this also does apply to the idea of real IDs, is that saying that injunction only applies right now to passport-related issues, and it can also apply to other federal documentation too, like Social Security Administration and numbers. But state-level ID is not impacted by that. That is a totally different area, because that is up to the control of state governments, and that will largely be based on like your own state. So like those who are here, Michigan has been pretty good about this. I guess the state kind of got lucky there with kind of how the government is currently situated, and 2024, as that ended, technically having been a unified blue government, where even at the very end there were a few progressive changes with regards to like being able to legally change one's name. I think that was House Bill 5300, and then also I think birth certificates also got a positive change to being able to change like gender marker and name on that as well for the state. I think that was House Bill 5303. There were two particular bills, 5301 and 5302, that were in regards to changing gender markers to include an X on licenses, which was one bill, and then personal ID, which was the other bill. And those didn't make it at the very end of the last legislative session here in the state here. But that wasn't the worst thing, mainly because of the fact that the current governor's office, Governor Whitmer, they do have, I guess it would really be decent, but like, they do have policy in place right now that allows the same exact thing. It isn't as solidified as actual law, because, you know, when there is an exchange of power, that policy can easily be reversed. It really just depends on who's coming in and what they want to see. But for the time being, that is something that's, like, we're seeing the effect from what those bills would have been here in the state. Other states, unfortunately, don't have that permission as much. With the one executive order, that is in regard to the immutable sex, and, you know, like just like you either are male or female, and that's it. There are a lot of states that, my theory, largely the Heritage Foundation pushing these writers, but a lot of state legislatures this year have introduced legislation that also takes the same exact wording from the executive order, tweaks it a little bit to be compliant with their state laws, state governance, and then that essentially being the thing that paves the way for state level documentation to also require having to be like first sex and then also omitting an X marker too. Ohio being a really good example, unfortunately. But that being said, for identification, it will largely be state dependent. For those states which do allow more accurate name changes or gender marker changes, if you're able to get a real ID from those states, that would also allow you to have more flying power in terms of at least like interstate. And I'm not sure if all states have an enhanced ID system. That would also be something that maybe I make a little note later for figuring that one out. But since I do know a lot of people commonly have a question about traveling to Canada, if not out of concern of needing to flee the country, at least for the sense of being able to travel north, an enhanced ID would be a really good thing to be able to remind myself later. And I unfortunately don't have a pen, but I guess I'll just remember it by a little mnemonic. Helps you remember. So that being said, moving past passports, the other topic that I wanted to talk about was for those who want to pursue either changing their name or changing information on a driver's license or birth certificates. Again, those are all state level needs. Those aren't federal level concern because where you're born, the state that you're born with, they hold the records of your birth certificate. They also probably hold the record of like your identification if you still live in the same state. And so it would largely be a question of like what your state allows for. The best resource by far that I have found for that information, Advocates for Trans Equality, they have a webpage which I'm basically verbalizing it here, but I also want to say for anyone listening in and also people here, all the resources that we do have, they will be on our website, and I'll explain what that looks like a little bit later too. But anything that I mentioned here, if you feel like you need to ask about like where do I get that information again, or like how, second chance after, and please don't feel anxious about having to like listen too carefully if you miss something. But A for TE, Advocates for Trans Equality, they have a part on their website that's just like /documents, and they have a drop down for like, pick your state, and for every state they have really great detailed information for all those things. Changing your name, having birth certificates updated, having your state level identification and your licenses updated too. And my only caution there is be sure to corroborate that with anything that is in your actual state in terms of a resource too, because not all the information is 100% up to date, but your team is super active, so I would trust them to be a good resource to say, like, if you need any of that information. They're a really good starting place. And then local nonprofits within a particular organization, also a really good follow-up. And then for local nonprofits, the Equality Federation doesn't have a member in every state, but in a lot of states, they usually have an equality state. Like here, we have Equality Michigan. Not every equality member is an equality state, though. For example, like the one in Alaska, I unfortunately don't have their name here, but they're not called Equality Alaska. There's something entirely different, but they're still a member of the federation. So their federation does allow for like other third-party nonprofits to become members. And I would say for getting a good starter for like all things advocacy or support, for those listening, definitely look for your Equality Federation member, and use them as a really good launch pad to ask about what other nonprofits in my area are here to help. Because they're also the good guys too. They're really great at knowing like their own network within a state. But they would be useful for corroborating stuff like name change information. Moving on to hotlines, this is one that unfortunately important as well, and we have seen funding cuts with some of the hotlines. For example, the 988 was cut, and that was evil, but on the flip side, which I don't agree with, but which is what their argument is, it's funding cuts for something that they don't feel is important, and that's almost always their logic for very cruel acts of inhumanity. But and 988 unfortunately lost their funding, so they're not really able to operate at this time. But other hotlines that do still exist, I have a few of them here. There are the LGBT Plus National Hotline. I believe that's lgbthotline.org. There's a youth talk line, which is also under them as well. There's a senior hotline also under them. And then these names and their numbers, which one are already public information, two, we will also be posting so people can be able to follow where these are if they are in need of these. Trans Lifeline, they also have a hotline that is really great specifically for the trans community. And the Treasure Project, which also did receive some, a lot of cuts to their funding, is still there, and they're still using their network. But those are really good resources for people who, if you know anyone, even yourself, who are in a moment of crises, those are really great to reach out to. And they treat information confidentially. It's always more important to reach out when you need help than to worry about if you're bothering someone. That's my take on that. And that also falls under being good to yourself. So definitely never feel too small to ask, because again, you're bigger than you realize.
There's another birth certificate question.
Is there a way to move your birth certificate if your birth state isn't currently? Unfortunately, there isn't. If your birth certificate is tied to the state that you're in, you can still seek identification in other states. Back when I was living in California, I remember that was a thing for people who were moving from redder states. They would have to fly back home to their original state to amend birth certificates. But that doesn't mean that the state that you now reside in won't grant you identification that is accurate for you. But again, it's very situational, it's very state by state, and definitely look into the process for the state that you live in for identification, and then your state of birth for birth certificates. There's a person who's leaving. Thank you for checking in, and I don't know. Have a good day to that one person who's departing. That's all I have. The next thing I was going to discuss were medical resources. This is something that I mentioned earlier. A lot of these resources that we have, we will be having on our site, and we're currently working on what we've been calling a resource map. It's meant to be a consolidated list of resources that are kind of all needs, really, like legal, medical, support, social, and one that is inclusive of as much information as possible while holding the balance of not having like everything out there, because there are certain resources that would wish to be a little bit more discreet, especially at a time now when resources like that are under attack too. But for those who are very comfortable with having their information shared, because they do believe that it's more important to have their resource known than to hide it and risk people not seeing that, we're going to be putting together our resource map, which hopefully should be out by the end of the month. That is something that, for anyone out there listening virtually, you might have noticed our website recently was overhauled, and that's been a long time coming, but there is a set pages for resources, and there will be a pretty fun interactive map there. But for medical resources, that will also be a location where we list a lot of these. But I wanted to say that for a lot of the trans youth care, gender affirming care for trans youth, and I largely just say, again, medically necessary care, like that there shouldn't really have to be that distinction there. It is absolutely medically necessary. The Spermeti case, which was officially issued, I think like June 18th or so. It was mid-June. I was actually in DC at the time. Our team was there rallying at Congress and Capitol, and the Spermeti case came out, and it had a very unfortunate outcome. But the disclaimer here being with the state of our healthcare system post-Spermeti, there are a lot of resources more directed for youth that our team is aware of, but we also are in more that careful position of not wanting to be super like public about the remaining healthcare providers out there. Largely smaller clinics, but the healthcare systems out there that are still very adamantly providing for the needs of younger trans, non-binary individuals. But those are the ones who right now are getting a lot of that heat, which is unfortunate. That's where a lot of that angry rhetoric is. Same, like a pretty commonly used angle of like save the kids, but it's not even irony, it's just like cruelty of going after care for children is not actually caring for the kids. And that's just like flatly the case. But for those resources, we're kind of keeping those a little bit more hush. But again, anyone out there listening, definitely feel free to reach out if you either feel that you are in need of that, or if you know somebody who might be a friend, family member, etc. But for remaining care otherwise, and this is kind of stated more largely, more nationally, Planned Parenthood obviously really great, wonderful allies. They've been doing a lot of great work for decades, and they also are under attack for a number of other reasons too, but definitely reach out if you have any questions there. On the more for-profit side of stuff, I would probably say, and this is a disclaimer, I'm not being paid to say this, nor is the nonprofit being paid to say this. I just had the courtesy of being able to talk to their team in the past, but to my knowledge, Folks Healthcare is probably a really good resource in all 50 states for being able to receive gender affirming care. The only trade-off there is that they do unfortunately have some heftier membership fees that kind of come with their medical service. And while a lot of their states do technically take insurance, especially ones like Florida and Texas, which are probably the most impacted states in these regards. Not all states take all forms of insurance, so it's very much your miles may vary. But if they're not a service that you've heard of before, they're relatively newer in that they've been around, I think, for a few years, but that's kind of new in the grand scheme of healthcare. Check them out. And again, I'm only plugging them in because I feel like they're reliable enough. Not being paid to say that. But that would be more on the healthcare side. I wanted to jump away from healthcare to also talk about another one, which is a little bit different, but research as resources. It's a bit of a less practical resource, but it's pretty important because research is also under attack, and that's more of a general statement too. But this is a pretty good resource for those more on the advocacy side of things. I actually wrote down here that as a circumstantial resource, it's really useful for those who are, testifying in committee, maybe at like your state government or local government. Anyone who, much like our team, is invested in any form of like lobbying, any form of advocacy for legislation or community needs, or if you're ever in a environment where talking points are important. Research is really great, and being able to use like case studies, backup claims of data, has a really good effect. And I mentioned as a resource that it's important, but we're seeing a lot of pseudoscience also come out recently. I would call out negatively the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine, or SEGA, and they are absolutely a hate group, even though they deny it. But Southern Poverty Law Center also clearly says hate group. I'm saying they're a hate group, and they recently were trying to be used as a continuing medical education provider for physicians and other healthcare providers, I think through Washington State University. That actually was rescinded because there was enough pushback saying, don't let a hate group be used as like a CE provider, and that is, they are not deserving of that at all. It's also a case of follow the money, because follow their money and it goes into very dark paths. But they've been pushing out a lot of stuff that is being used more contemporarily for like having to take away healthcare, particularly for trans youth at like the state level, state government level, because they often have their papers referred to or cited, and very dubious. But my point here being that part of our team, which we're calling Trans Truth, they basically collaborate with other resources out there. I think I mentioned this earlier too, but definitely get involved with our team in that regard if people would like to volunteer in a more academic sort of manner. That's what's important right now. I did also mention that research is advocacy, and that's because it is. So being able to help other institutional colleagues be able to continue projects and studies that they were working on, given all the funding cuts through NIH. That is something that we are looking to be able to assist with, but don't discount the science as a form of research too. Likewise, on our website too, the research map, and also some pages that are related to that trans youth arm of our team. We are compiling a lot of the data, and even stuff that was purged by the NCBI, like the NIH department, when new CDC and new NIH took effect at the start of this year. But a lot of that data that was scraped off the website, still legitimate data, it's still real science, and so being able to have access to that is something that our team is also compiling and keeping there to preserve for future use. But that was just a little thing about being mindful of the research out there. News resources, probably a pretty like ready to go one that I don't know if anyone is I don't know how many people are less familiar with her, but Erin Reed definitely a really great independent journalist, airing in the morning. And the shout out there is that one, she is transgender as well. Two, she dedicates her work to trans queer news. And three, she works her butt off like every day of the year, and she provides a lot of great information. Her site also has a legal risk assessment map, which also includes like legislation tracking and giving a really good assessment for each state, like the safety both for adults and for youth. And like that's something that her team also updates every few months or so. So definitely keep watching that for information. In addition to her, I would also say that the Trans Journalists Association is a really good resource for other independent journalists out there who are also covering things in our space. I did mention earlier about mainstream news, and I don't have to go on to a whole like diatribe about that, but we definitely do need a lot more coverage of what's happening here because coverage equals exposure equals change, and the less that is covered, the less that is changed. So the more that people are keeping up to date with news in community and by the community, it fights like the Sinclair broadcasting media levels of power where you have like millions and millions and millions of people just being told really dumb things because that's how a lot of the other forms of media get passed now. But that's probably my last like resource there for media and journalism. The last one I have here is peer support, and I'm probably going to link to it. It's not covered by 99%, but I haven't seen anything new there. For peer support, that comes both virtually and in person. The in-person one here, alluding again to not wanting to really like divulge too many smaller groups, but definitely reach out in each state that you feel you want to have that information for, more than likely where you're living, but also maybe other states. For example, people out there who might be considering relocating, definitely get a good sense of those resources like locally to you and in your destination B state. But some of the bigger chains like Equality Federation that I mentioned earlier, they're really great as starters to look into that. And then also teams like ours too are really good because we have people who are on the ground, people who like live the same life, and they understand like where to find these different places. And that could be like cafe meetups, that can be like libraries and events that are very like radically inclusive and safe spaces. And so, but it's important to have those, even for those out there who, much like me, are socially anxious and not the most like socially outgoing people. It's still really good to have that because like some sense of connectivity is always important. So don't discourage that. It also goes a long way to mental health and not feeling going crazy. Just having somebody that can just talk about like, oh, that shirt's a nice color. Like, it's very, very impactful in many ways. For virtual spaces, the only one that I would also probably mention is that like we do have an online Discord. It's huge, it's growing, it's a safe space, it's actively moderated, and there's a lot of people out there who get it. So if you ever need somebody to talk to, like vent your problems or just to say hello to, or even just to ask questions, definitely feel free to reach out to spaces like ours as well. And then I think aside from that, that was a lot of the like stuff I wanted to topically go over that I had written down. And there were some resources I wasn't really able to call out here, but that will also be on our site, especially over the next couple of weeks. And also as we start to launch that, our resource map will be one that can be submitted by people, in that people can like send suggestions to different resources near them, and then we both vet them and also make sure that we get a sense of like confirmation and consent from that actual set of people that we can include on the list. But it would be great for people to be able to access like things near them. And this is largely speaking to people out in areas that don't feel that they're as connected to the community around them. I know that here, like where I'm standing physically, very pro all things LGBTQ plus. Not even just like here, but like lots of people locally. But there are a lot of places out there that people feel less like they're able to find what's near them. So I'll probably just say stay tuned for being able to have resources more readily available. Because that goes a long way just to feeling like life's normal. And I think aside from that, I wanted to take a full scoop of my laptop. Still good, still alive. Wanted basically to ask if there were any questions, both either in the audience virtually or if any of you here also had any questions too about anything. But if not, I do appreciate those of you listening, especially those of you online. I'll probably give it like maybe a little bit, like maybe 15 seconds or so if somebody's typing anything. While I do that, I'm going to sip on some decaf. Getting colder, right? I have something warm to sip on or consume. Like you feel it in here immediately. It's like very warm, but I know last winter when I was going to the different places that I was, like in Michigan here, I was up at the Capitol, like the state Capitol a couple times, leading different things. And when you're out there just talking or you're giving like a formal speech, you get cold very quickly. So sometimes you can see, it's not that someone's uncomfortable, it's just like their body starts shivering and it makes it harder to really talk. And you kind of notice that has an impact on like your delivery and stuff. Alright, so far I'm not really seeing any questions. I'll definitely still give it another glance in a little bit. But I think that people also, hopefully if they saw, you know, like a flyer online about this event today, that you also are able to find like the information page for other events that we have, and then also just like our webpage itself being one that if you have any questions about reaching out, if you want to know like where we're located, that's actually just directly on a map on our site, but like where we're located, all the different programs and services that we do, our values, our mission statement, members of our team, and other things that we've done in the past. Check out our website, transgender.org. And if you had any questions that maybe you didn't feel comfortable asking in the chat, because I get it, it feels weird sometimes and you're not really sure who's watching. But definitely feel free to either email us, we check emails and we respond as quickly as we can. We have a hotline, so feel free to use that. You can see it on our website too. And the same number that goes to the hotline, if you feel like you have to, you can also signal it or text it. Those are also other ways to reach out. But at least know where that information is so that if you need to ask further, please do. And yeah, I think that's probably about it for what I wanted to. North Carolina. So I don't know much about South Carolina, but at least for North Carolina, we do have members in North Carolina. I'm more familiar with places around Raleigh, which I imagine sounds a little bit more apparent since it's kind of like where a lot of the more democratic centers are. But there are some other places in the state too, a little further away from there, that are also full of really wonderful people. A lot more like in town and community based, I would say. But I do know of a few of them. Equality, North Carolina. Maybe they called North Carolina Equality. I don't have them like on the top of my head or on the paper here, but I do know of a few different groups that I have Zoomed with some of their team members, and yeah, they do a lot of great work. So I would say that, kind of long story short, I'm aware of some groups out there. I know that they exist. I know that they're running before. I can try to follow up with you after the fact somehow to get you that information, because I'm not just saying as an empty statement that they exist. Like, I know they exist, and you probably would be really interested in being able to follow up with them, is what I guess. But the other person, no problem. Yeah. Anything here? It's kind of weird having to juggle like the. Yeah. at this time, I'm probably going to um, probably just wrap it up. That way, at least I can probably walk around a little bit, kind of warm up for a second. If anyone still had any questions, especially if they trickle in and I just don't see them, and it's too late. I'll see you on the chat after the class. You can definitely review what people are asking. I'll definitely also say here, kind of give people just enough to follow up. Sorry. You're welcome. The only thing I will send here is just, and assuming I totally forgot. Anyone that does have any questions, email that email that goes to us and our team, and we'll definitely be in touch when we can. But that being said, I'm going to wrap up this meeting of this. So those of you out there, thank you for listening. Thank you for checking in. And I think the only other thing I would say that I probably should have put this on the agenda to talk about too. We are having an advocacy training workshop next Saturday. That also will be streamed, and right now we're still deciding on physical location, like in person as well. But that one will be more focused to being able to get some really basic skills about leading like a lobbying event for different local level needs. That can be city council, that can be state level. We've lobbied in Congress before, and probably aren't going to focus on that because that's a little bit more coordinated. But for local level stuff, or things affecting like your school board or your city council, being able to talk about ordinances that would make it safer in your hometown, or being able to look at like state level legislation and to be able to inspire people in your community to fight or support what you're seeing depending. That's something that we'll be talking about, and hopefully that imparts some knowledge to people who right now in November, and then kind of going forward as in the next few months, like this kind of different state level governments continue forward with new legislation of the year. Hopefully that can get some people going there. But we're going to have that information on our social media and our site too, so definitely feel free to follow along and look for updates on that. And anyone else have anything? Thank you so much for your time. Happy Saturday, and stay warm out there.